Bum, bum, bum. Welcome to the 98th episode of the Henry George Week Daily Devotional. My name is Max and I am a Georgist. I am recording these readings because my friend John didn't like the free audiobook of Progress and Poverty, and my mission is to make John a Georgist. We continue in chapter 4 of book 9, chapter 4 of the changes that would be wrought in social organization and social life. Book 9 is Effects of the Remedy. George writes, does this seem impracticable? Consider for a moment the vast changes that would be wrought in social life by a change which would assure to labor its full reward. We would banish want and the fear of want and give to the humblest freedom to develop a natural symmetry. We read that. We are apt to assume greed is the strongest of human motives. Yes, we talked about that too. Yes, this was very powerful yesterday. Gospel of Dives. Anxious to get more. Potent for bad, potent for good. To benefit with this abolition of one. With this abolition of want and the fear of want, the admiration of riches would decay. I think we did read that. Well, in this way, no, I don't think we read this. Okay, sorry for this inefficiency. I believe this is where we left off. I do remember reading Lilies of the Field. With this abolition of want and the fear of want, the admiration of riches would decay. Although we did talk about that idea. And men would seek the respect and approbation, I remember reading approbation, of their fellows in other modes than by acquisition and display of wealth. In this way, they would be brought to the management of public affairs. And I don't think, maybe this is where we started, but I feel like I would have remembered reading about the Olympian Games. I don't know. In this way, there will be brought to the management of public affairs and the administration of common funds the skill, the attention, the fidelity, and integrity that can now be secured only for private interests. And a railroad or gas works might be operated on public account, not only more economically and efficiently than as at present under joint stock management, but as economically and efficiently as would be possible under a single ownership. Yeah, okay, I did not read this. This claim is something. I don't know if I can buy it fully. Um, Maybe I don't have as pure I don't view the human as pure as George does. The idea that these publicly owned utilities would run more efficiently. I'm not sure. The prize of the Olympian Games that called for the most strenuous exertions of all Greece was but a wreath of wild olive. For a bit of ribbon, men have over and over again performed services no money could have bought. It is interesting that it is true that money is not the greatest of all motivators. For indeed, money simply points to wealth, and wealth simply grants you the ability to satisfy the desires of men. Short-sighted is the philosophy which counts on selfishness as the master motive of human action. It is blind to facts of which the world is full. It sees not the present, and reads not the past aright. If you would move men to action, to what shall you appeal? Not to their pockets, but to their patriotism, not to selfishness, but to sympathy. Self-interest is, as it were, a mechanical force, potent, it is true, capable of large and wide results. But there is in human nature what may be likened to a chemical force, which melts and fuses and overwhelms, to which nothing seems impossible. All that a man hath will he give for his life. That is self-interest. But in loyalty to higher impulses, men will give even life. Yo, I wouldn't die for money. It is not selfishness that enriches the annals of every people with heroes and saints. It is not selfishness that on every page of the world's history bursts out in sudden splendor of noble deeds, or sheds the soft radiant of benignant lives. I mean, benevolent, benign. It was not selfishness that turned Gautama's back to his royal home, or bade the Maid of Orleans lift the sword from the altar. I don't know this story. I don't know Gautama either. Gautama. Maybe I'm Gautama. The Buddha. That held the 300 in the pass of Thermopylae, or gathered into Winkelried's. Don't know this guy either. Arnold von Winkelried. Bosom the sheaf of spears that chained Vincent de Paul to the bench of the galley. I want to read all these people's stories. Or brought little starving children during the Indian famine, tottering to the relief stations with yet weaker starvelings in their arms. Call it religion, patriotism, sympathy, the enthusiasm for humanity, or the love of God. I wonder what Jordan Peterson would make of this. Hello. Yeah, who knows? I don't really keep up with his views. I know my mom was pretty into Jordan Peterson several years ago, but I don't, other than I know he's a big believer in hierarchies and making your bed. I do think it would be not a bad goal for Georgists to try to get somebody onto his podcast. I think he's got one of the most viewed podcasts. I think getting a Georgist onto any of the big podcasts is a pretty decent goal. And I do think this is something that he could embrace. Call it religion, patriotism, sympathy, the enthusiasm for humanity, or the love of God. Give it what name you will. There is yet a force which overcomes and drives out selfishness. I mean, there is sometimes a reaction to Georgism from people who think it's socialistic, you should get to own your land, and they just really tie up land with the sense of he's got a big audience and he spouts the right wing position on inequality. I see. Yeah, maybe. It is, there's that line, you ain't no kind of man if you ain't got land. And that kind of conservative attitude sometimes is pretty dominant. Send him an email. There is yet a force which overcomes and drives out selfishness, a force which is the electricity of the moral universe, a force beside which all others are weak. Everywhere that men have lived it has shown its power, and today as ever the world is full of it. To be pitied is the man who has never seen and never felt. Look around, among common men and women, amid the care and the struggle of daily life, in the jar of the noisy street, and amid the squalor where want hides, every here and there is the darkness, lighted with the tremulous play of its lambent flames. He who has not seen it has walked with shut eyes. He who looks may see, as says Plutarch, that the soul has a principle of kindness in itself, and is born to love, as well as to perceive, think, or remember. He needs to acknowledge that the left have a point. Yeah, I don't know much about Peterson's particular views, and I don't know. I'm not, left and right. These names, these groups. It's one of the most frustrating things for me. Um, the two-party system, like attaching this kind of like narrative tribalism. Like I enjoy tribalism. I love picking a team and rooting for a team, but it is very upsetting to me when I think about how that dominates our uh, legislative bodies and our like, I don't know, our society, I guess, or something like that. I don't even think it really does. It's like I feel like the political media world is just its own thing that's like not even that super tied to, like, at the end of the day, the significance of abortion and gun control, it like it does not affect the welfare of a huge of the huge majority of people. It just doesn't even really intersect with their life much at all. There are hobbyist gun owners, and it's like one hobby among a bajillion hobbies in the US. And I don't know how often women need to get aborted, but anyway, my point is that this so much time and so much of the news is dedicated to like issues like that. And it's just Georgism gives both left and right what they say they want. Yeah, because I think the big parties, it's just wealth and power parties. And yeah, they fight, they almost pretend to fight with each other so long as whichever wealthy, powerful party keeps on promoting the classism. I don't know. Uh, and this force of forces that now goes to waste or assumes perverted forms, we may use for the strengthening and building up and ennobling of society, if we but will, just as we now use physical forces that once seemed but powers of destruction. All we have to do is but to give it freedom and scope. The wrong that produces inequality, the wrong that in the midst of abundance tortures men with want or harries them with the fear of want, that stunts them physically, degrades them intellectually, and distorts them morally, is what alone prevents harmonious social development. For all that is from the gods is full of providence. We are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. I don't know what that quotation is from, of. There are people into whose heads it never enters to conceive of any better state of society than that which now exists, who imagine that the idea that there could be a state of society in which greed would be banished, prisons stand empty, and individual interests be subordinated to general interests, and no one seek to rob or to oppress his neighbor. This is but the dream of impracticable dreamers, for whom these practical level-headed men, who pride themselves on recognizing facts as they are, have a hearty contempt. But such men, though some of them write books, and some of them occupy the chairs of university, and some of them stand in pulpits, do not think. Yeah, this issue that the Georges get called impracticable dreamers. It's, I don't know. If they were accustomed to dine in such eating houses as are to be found in the lower quarters of London and Paris, where the knives and forks are chained to the table, they would deem it the natural, ineradicable disposition of man to carry off the knife and fork with which he has eaten. Take a company of well-bred men and women dining together. There is no struggling for food, no attempt on the part of anyone to get more than his neighbor, no attempt to gorge or to carry off. I attempt to gorge. On the contrary, each one is anxious to help his neighbor before he partakes himself, to offer to others the best rather than pick it out for himself. And should anyone show the slightest disposition to prefer the gratification of his own appetite to that of the others, or in any way to act the pig or pilferer, the swift and heavy penalty of social contempt and ostracism would show how such conduct is reprobated by common opinion. Gorgism. Yeah, I'm a gorge Georgist. Geo-gorgist. Yeah, this kind of thing is crazy, is so interesting. Like, uh, whenever I've always been a fan of classic literature, especially like the Russian stuff, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy. Um, and it's just so funny when you're reading those. Well, I don't know. He deals with the poor a lot more often. Uh, it is just odd when you so much of historical um, stories just are about the aristocracy, where Tolstoy was a huge right. I know, or late in life, Tolstoy was a huge fan of Henry George, because definitely his character Levin struggled with the land question in a sense, and with all of his serfs. Um, but it is just so funny when we watch all these period dramas, and it's just the wealthy with the wealthy, and yet we think that wealth is all that matters. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what I'm saying. It is funny how they still do care about who's wealthiest, but in practice, they all have so much money that it doesn't, what becomes important is not really moment to moment who's wealthier, but there is that desperate fear of becoming um, not part of the group, not marrying the right guy. Of course, they don't talk a lot about the second and third sons who don't get much, have to go to work. All this is so common as to excite no remark, as to seem the natural state of things. Yet it is no more natural that men should not be greedy of food than that they should not be greedy of wealth. They are greedy of food when they are not assured that there will be a fair and equitable distribution which will give each enough. This is going to be like tonight when I'm with my video game developer friends and someone's bringing pizza, and everyone's going to want to take like 4 or 5 slices, but everyone has to start with two and then wait. We'll all pretend that we don't want to take more. But when these conditions are assured, they cease to be greedy of food. And so in society as at present, also there was no obesity epidemic in George's time yet. And so in society as at present constituted, men are greedy of wealth, because the conditions of distribution are so unjust that instead of each being sure of enough, many are certain to be condemned to want. It is the devil catch the hindmost of present social adjustments that causes the race and scramble for wealth, in which all considerations of justice, mercy, religion, and sentiment are trampled underfoot, in which men forget their own souls and struggle to the very verge of the grave for what they cannot take beyond. But an equitable distribution of wealth that would exempt all from the fear of want would destroy the greed of wealth, just as in polite society the greed of food has been destroyed. Sounds good. I don't know if you need to be fully persuaded of this. And this whole chapter is very not deductive, I would guess, and not necessary to buying into the land value tax, but it is quite hopeful, and I think I believe a lot of this. On the crowded streamers of the early California lines, there was often a marked difference between the manners of the steerage and the cabin, which illustrates this principle of human nature. An abundance of food was provided for the steerage as for the cabin, but in the former there were no regulations which ensured efficient service, and the meals became a scramble. I'm assuming the cabin is like the officers, and the steerage is passengers with the cheapest tickets. Yeah. I don't know if cabin then is officers or just the wealthier passengers. I like it when Georgists discuss what a Georgist system would be like day to day. It's fun. I really enjoy arguing about whether or not copyrights and patents should be completely abolished so we can move to a free, open, and perhaps patronage-based art world, and also the idea of more worker-owned organizations of labor, and of course all of the more dense, community-centric, like urban planning, I guess. The dreams, the dreams of Georgists. All right, so the idea here, if there's plenty of food for both the poor passengers as for the rich passengers, but in the former, being the steerage, there were no regulations which ensured efficient service, the meals became a scramble. In the cabin, on the contrary, where each was allotted his place, there was no fear that everyone would not get enough. There was no such scrambling and waste as were witnessed in the steerage. The difference was not in the character of the people, but simply in this fact. It's hard to say. I still wouldn't go as far as it's the difference in the character, but it is also there's probably a difference in expectation. The poor people are probably not as trusting or more used to there being scrambles and are very ready to act. And the wealthy people probably are not used to such things and don't expect such things, and you don't get these sort of cascading panics like a um, like a bank run. Uh, I do think those factor in, but I do think the system determines a lot of behavior in many, many, many areas of human behavior, and that while I think maybe the wealthy people would be slower to panic if there were no efficient system in place, I agree that they would descend into a scramble as well. The cabin passenger transferred to the steerage would participate in the greedy rush. This is a very nice way of explaining. Yes, and the steerage passenger transferred to the cabin would at once become decorous and polite. The same difference would show itself in society in general were the present unjust distribution of wealth replaced by a just distribution. Yeah, that was a very elegant demonstration of how societal norms are quickly adopted. Societal norms are downstream of the allocation of scarce resources. A higher level of living can be brought to all of humans. Hooray! We have to suffer the awful scramble to get on the property ladder. Yeah, yeah, exact. And and those on the property ladder are always scared of falling off of it, as they should be. Consider this existing fact. Uh, we Consider this existing fact of a cultivated and refined society in which all the coarser passions are held in check, not by force, not by law, but by common opinion, and the mutual desire of pleasing. If this is possible for a part of a community, it is possible for a whole community. There are states of society in which everyone has to go armed, in which everyone has to hold himself in readiness to defend person and property with the strong hand. If we have progressed beyond that, we may progress still further. But it may be said, to banish want and the fear of want would be to destroy the stimulus to exertion. Men would simply become idlers, and such a happy state of general comfort and content would be the death of progress. This is the old slaveholder's argument, that men can be driven to labor only with the lash. Nothing is more untrue. What might be banished? Want might be banished, but desire would remain. Man is the unsatisfied animal. He has but begun to explore, and the universe lies before him. Each step that he takes opens new vistas and kindles new desires. He is the constructive animal. He builds, he improves, he invents, and puts together. And the greater the thing he does, the greater the thing he wants to do. He is more than an animal. Whatever be the intelligence that breathes through nature, it is in that likeness that man is made. The steamship, driven by her throbbing engines through the sea, is in kind, though not in degree, as much a creation as the whale that swims beneath. The telescope and the microscope, what are they but added eyes, which man has made for himself? The soft webs and fair colors in which our women array themselves, do they not answer to the plumage that nature gives the bird? Man must be doing something, or fancy that he is doing something, for in him throbs the creative impulse. The mere basker in the sunshine is not a natural, but an abnormal man. Yeah, what is that? Oh, Oh no, what's her name? Dorothy Sayers. Maker. Creator's image. I don't. What's Dorothy? We'll just look at her books. The Mind of the Maker. Yeah. This is a very, Christian religious perspective, but we are made in the image of God. God's defining attribute is he is the creator. And so being made in the image of the creator, we ourselves are destined and purposed for creation. I've always remembered this. Well, clearly I kind of forgot. Mind of the Maker. So that is probably where I'm ending my reading for today. So that is where I'm ending episode 98 of the Henry George Daily Devotional. See you next time. All right, recording is over. Wait, D. Bruce, are you the LA Henry George? What was? Oh, D. I think that was like Bruce Baker. Maybe I'm mixing it. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for coming by. I can't remember the name of that man. H 98, Book 9, Chapter 4, Continued 2. Episode 98, Continued 2. This was a little bit. Alright, so this is where we ended. I guess the main idea. The main idea is man is noble. Man is noble when not destitute. I don't know. When want and the fear of want are got rid of, man becomes noble. Man is creative and will continue to seek progress. This is unlocked by sharing the earth, is what I will say. I could see somebody saying this isn't perhaps a real. Well, some people clearly gives examples of like some people who are noble when destitute. Some people might argue can't really be noble if it's purely reliant on being well off, or like that is not nobility or something. Um, like it's not that admirable to be willing to share at dinner when there's more than enough for everyone. You know, we look at Tim Cratchit and Tiny Tim in Christmas Carol, who are desperate and yet willing to share. I don't know. I think that's some kind of weird idea that you can't really be like if you I don't know. It's like the noble knight who like seeks out danger and needs to put himself in harm's way just to demonstrate his valor, like how young men often want to go to war simply so that they can prove their value. But now, I mean, we have sport, which can prove definitely your like capabilities and talent. It doesn't really prove quite the same, perhaps moral, um, or willingness to sacrifice yourself for the good of your homeland and the love you have for your home and family and friends. I don't know. It's all interesting. Makes me think of the Dan Carlin hardcore history guy talking about why he likes history so much and seeing people at their extremes. I didn't check for any comments. All right. Goodbye.